So March is recognized as Women's History Month. The first Women's History Week was held in Sonoma, California in 1978 in order to draw attention to the fact that women were left out of many textbooks and historic narratives and curriculums. The organizers picked this week to correspond with International Women's Day, which was held on March 8th. In 1987, it became a nationally recognized month to honor women's contributions throughout history, which we have been celebrating annually ever since. So we are very excited to welcome Dr. Gaylynn Welch to help us celebrate remarkable New York women during today's talk. Dr. Gaylynn Welch is a lecturer in the history department at SUNY Potsdam, and she also teaches a summer course for SUNY-Canton. Her research focuses on relationships between local suffragists and leaders of national suffrage organizations. Her new New York history article, entitled "Suffrage at the Schoolhouse Door, the New York State Suffrage Campaign and Changing Strategies and Rationale for Women's Votes," focuses on the neglected partial suffrage laws that are important but often neglected by historians. Currently, Dr. Welch has been researching early 20th century suffrage movement in St. Lawrence and Franklin counties. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Gaylynn Welch.
Thank you, Arlene. Thank you to the Center for having me here today. And I'm just going to arrange my notes here for a moment and get started. Okay, so the title here is "The Loss for the Win, the 1950 Women's Suffrage Campaign in St. Lawrence County." So this was a campaign that, as the title notes, was a loss. So it was a referendum campaign to change the New York State Constitution. And the win would come a couple of years later in the 1917 referendum campaign. And I have my contact information here if you have related research or questions at any point. I do welcome those questions and that information. So I'm going to start here with just some background for the research, the process for the research, and that this all came out of a display project for the Mary E. English Commons at SUNY Potsdam. And the specific display is called Minerva's Attic. And I'll just again just go over the process here. So first of all, Cindy Wells, who is on the board for Mary E. English Commons and teaches at SUNY Potsdam, who's here actually for the presentation, approached me about the display and with ideas for suffrage, certainly something women's history, suffrage, and hopefully with a connection to the college, connection to Potsdam. And Cindy knew that I had this research background in the suffrage movement. So that was the start, right? That we're going to look into women's history, suffrage, and Potsdam, and hopefully the college. Before I go on to the next slide, I just want to point out here, so this is a project, Mary E. English Commons, or me with the SUNY Potsdam History Department. The Potsdam Museum played a really big role in this project. And then the intern for the project, Toki Mukai, who had taken classes in museum studies and history. And I invited Toki to be here today to participate, but he had to work. Otherwise, he would have joined in on Zoom. Okay, Mary English Commons, and then first step after that, or after talking with Cindy about the focus, was to meet with the research librarian, Brian Cavet at SUNY Potsdam. Toki and I met with Brian, and he was extremely helpful. He got us started with some sources, the New York Heritage Digital Collections, which has, I'll just say a lot. It's a great site for primary source research. in New York, and has the Potsdam Normal magazine, has the Pioneer, which is the yearbook for Potsdam, and those, because they're digital collections, are, and I'm not going to use the word easily, but they are searchable. And that was an important step, but also more specifically, Brian Cavett identified an article or found an article in the Potsdam Normal magazine that talked about Carrie Chapman Catt, who was a very important leader of the suffrage movement in New York State on the national level. And at first it seemed like Carrie Chapman Catt had given this speech in Potsdam in 1915. That was not the case. Catt gave the speech in New York City, but it was connected to the Potsdam Normal College. And Catt, and I'm going to move ahead, I'll come back here to the Potsdam Museum. Oh, and also here's the title of that display, Potsdam 1915, Suffrage Agitation and Mobilization. And just keep in mind that at this point in time, we did not know we were going to focus on 1915. So I'm taking you through the process that led us to 1915 and Brian Cavett's very important role in that 1915 research. I mean, the New York State suffrage movement is enormous, right? So starting 1846 with the petition signed by 6 women in Watertown or near Watertown to the Constitutional Convention that women should vote. So that was the start of the movement, to 1917 to the state amendment. And then going to move ahead and come back to this one. Move ahead, I'll come back to this. So, so you love this title. All right, so at this talk in New York City, it seems, at least in terms of how some people interpreted her remarks, that she said some not so nice things about Potsdam. She said that the moss grows very heavily there, suggesting that Potsdam was behind the times. The illiteracy rate for the North Country was higher than anywhere in the state, and including New York City, where there were foreigners, right? And this this was covered in this area in St. Lawrence County, also in the New York City newspapers. There were different claims in some newspapers. Carrie Chapman Catt called Potsdam people moss eaters, or no, moss backs. What's it? Moss backs. And so this was a very interesting, right, start to the research. I have a copy here of the Potsdam Normal magazine editorial about this. I will just pass around if you're interested in taking a look. Catt defended herself, said, no, that's not what I meant at all. I actually meant that, how did she say? The West was actually ahead of the East, and denied most of it, or just that it was taken out of context, or just that it was misinterpreted. So some of these articles also identified or connected Catt to Potsdam in that she was born in Potsdam. Her parents were, but she was not. She was born in Wisconsin, and she went to school in Iowa, college there, became a superintendent of a school, became an editor of a newspaper, married a couple of times. I'll talk more about Carrie Chapman Callahan if you're interested and we have time. This was the start of the process. And in 1913, Carrie Chapman Catt had organized the Empire State Campaign Committee. Launching this major campaign for the referendum, 12 campaign districts, 15 assembly districts, over 2,000 election districts, all reporting to someone who would report to someone who would report to Catt. Right, this was a major effort. And so by 1915, Catt claimed that New York was the most intensively organized state in the Union. That may or may not have been true, right? But that was her claim. All right. I'm back here just for a moment. Also, Toki and I met with the folks at the Potsdam Museum who were extremely helpful. I was just there for the first meeting, and then Toki continued after that with the research. Mary Gilbert especially was very helpful in the research. And we were finding in the newspaper articles and in this research, the campaign information about Potsdam in 1915. And that's what led here to the final display, Potsdam 1915 Suffrage Agitation and Mobilization. And the dress here in the back corner, we have on loan from the Potsdam Museum. It wasn't worn by a suffragist. It's from the time period, so looks like the dresses that a suffragist would have worn. And here there's a timeline, a big timeline. And this is what Toki made with newspaper columns on the bottom for the local, for Potsdam timeline chronology, and at the top for the state to show what was going on in the state, what was going on at the local level. And starts with that not same title that I showed you for Cat Claus. It was a very similar one as that, however. And then up at the top, there's an image of the Potsdam Rural College. And the next row from that, there's an advertisement for the Potsdam Fair, which we'll look at more closely here in a moment. Also a banquet, what would it be called? Program for the WCTU banquet in 1915. And then images of 3 of the Potsdam leaders. And I'll talk more about those in a moment. The next shelf down, images of 3 state leaders, including Carrie Chapman Catt, and a couple of political cartoons there. And I think that is the image, a copy of a Grange program. And I'll talk more about the Grange in a moment. And then on this other side here, we have 3 pictures, 3 different places where Potsdam suffragists spoke: the fire station, Opera House, and the Potsdam Fair. And then here, I mispresented, just so at the top we have the WCTU and the Grange. And then below the 2 political cartoons, an image of this here that I'll pass around of the awakening. And let's reach around here to show the West moving east right? So this was part of Carrie Chapman Catt's rebuttal. Oh no, I was talking like this, right? Like the West bringing its progress to the East. That's what I was talking about. You just got me wrong. And then this is a letter that state Franklin County suffragist wrote to Jane Addams, and I'll come back to that. I have a couple of images here of Carrie Chapman Catt and the 1915 New York City parade. And then this was later, this is the image that we have in the display that Toki chose for the display. A closer up view of the timeline, and also a map showing suffrage progress and then lack thereof in certain places. The awakening, this is what I've circulated here to take a closer look at. And so at this next stage, I'm going to talk about the larger historical context for the state. And I'm going to draw from historians Susan Goodyear and Karen Pastorello. This is a 1917 publication, Women Will Vote. It's a great book on the suffrage movement in New York State. And in this one chapter, they focus on upstate Northern New York, Western New York organization through Granges. So support for suffrage in the Granges, WCTUs or Women Christian Temperance Unions, political equality clubs, and then in a separate chapter, they talk about the strategies of 1915, 1917, and that included these parades, like the 1915 parade with Carrie Chapman Catt, and also the role of automobiles, and especially at a time, you know, when it wasn't that common to see a lot of automobiles, or that a lot of people didn't necessarily have them. And so to go from place to place, suffragists going from place to place, you know, stopping town to town, you know, giving speeches, that sort of thing. And so I was interested in, you know, how their work, which was more comprehensive, compared to the focus that I had, that we had on 1915. And it was very much a connection, very much a connection that Potsdam, the Potsdam Grange, and I don't know, I wish I did know more about the Granges and the role of the Granges in Potsdam. But that was a support, WCTUs, Women Christian Temperance Union. There was the banquet from the union in Potsdam. Canton had a very active WCTU, Women's Christian Temperance League, and political equality clubs. And so all of these, according to these historians, emerged in a couple of decades or so after the Civil War. The Granges, which welcomed women as members from their start, and Women's Christian Temperance Unions that started promoting suffrage as well in the 1880s, 1890s. And First Grange, does anyone know? First Grange, first WCTU in New York? Fredonia, both of them. And yeah, and then one of the first political equality clubs, Jamestown. So really close to Fredonia. So these were all coming out of a similar place and then spreading across the state. Unfortunate picture. This is a passport picture. We couldn't find any other pictures of Catherine Barnhart Paddock. And she was the head of the Malone Political Equality Club. She was a Potsdam alumni. So I found Catherine Barnhart Paddock when I was searching through the Potsdam Normal Magazine and the yearbooks. she identified herself in a letter that she wrote in early 1930s as one of, let me just not mess this up here. One of Mrs. Carrie Chapman Catt's suffrage officials. She had written in the 1930s. So she was alumni of Potsdam Normal School, and after she married, attorney judge moved to Malone, and then as early as 1913, 1914, Paddock was involved in the suffrage movement, and she was hosting Carrie Chapman Catt at her home. She was holding suffrage teas. She was taking polls of support for suffrage and opposition to suffrage in the area. She was also a district leader for the National American Women's Suffrage Association. So she was extremely involved. And what name I'm looking for here. And she had also hosted with Carrie Chapman Catt, and this is from the Malone Farmer in 1914, Mrs. A.B. Hepburn. And this is a reference to Emily Louisa Eaton Hepburn, who graduated from St. Lawrence University, who was the wife of A.B. Hepburn. And that's the Hepburn of the donations to the libraries and colleges around. They lived in Canton 1914, but by 1914, we're living in New York City. Okay. So the spark for the Potsdam Equality Club was from Marion S. Frank, who was Ogdensburg suffragist. And I found when I was looking here for the marker that the Ogdensburg town historian has been giving some presentations about Marion Frank, one earlier this month that I only saw after the fact. I would have liked to have attended. Her husband, Julius, was mayor of Ogdensburg. And for her involvement, I found, and I should talk to the town historian of Ogdensburg, but I found just some summary of some papers in which her doctor, a psychologist, had suggested after the death of her child in the early 1900s that she become involved in suffrage as a way to cope, I guess. But she became very involved in the suffrage movement in Ogdensburg, head of the Political Equality League there. And then after her talk in Potsdam, the organization in Potsdam was born. The president was Mrs. C.S. Ferris, Olive Eliza Oakley Holt. Vice presidents included Mrs. Paul Whitney, and the secretary, Mrs. C.H. Sisson, Daisy Crane. I say thank you to the Potsdam Museum because they were tracking down these women's names because they all went by their husband's initials and the Mrs. And they were very helpful at the museum to help us identify their names. And there's not a lot of information on Ferris. Was married to a judge, was very involved in social activities, had a lot of information there, but just really not a lot of information about Ferris. Pretty limited information about Mrs. Paul Whitney as well. Whitney did attend the Crane School and was married and I'm not going to remember exactly, I think her husband, no, I'm not going to remember exactly what he did, but also very influential in the community. And probably you recognize the name Crane. So Daisy was a sister of Julia Crane, who established the Crane School. And also Daisy was a member of the Christian Science Church in Potsdam. I mentioned her membership because I have a letter, found a letter from the Christian Science, or that she wrote to the Christian Science Journal, that she was saved by the Spirit some 30 years before, and she was writing in the 30s. So this would have been very early in the 1900s, that she had consumption. She went to a place that was, she was told was safer. The Sissons had land in the Adirondacks. I'm sure she was talking about the Adirondacks. And before the doctor did anything else, she was saved by the Spirit. And also wrote that her daughter was also cured from a problem with her throat in one case, and from shoulder injury and finger injury in another. And so I did a little bit of looking, and Mary Baker Eddy of the Christian Science Church, who founder of, who died in 1910, had been a suffragist. And so it's just interesting. I'd like to know more about the link here and if that played a role for Daisy. And I apologize when I was talking about the WCTU. I wanted to bring up the banquet program, and it has the menu, it has the toasts, and the menu doesn't really seem all that that's great, I guess. Saltines and pickle, well, that looks good. Yeah, it's bouillon, I guess, a soup. And with Mrs. Harriet Stanton, the county president, who was giving, or who's the guest of honor, is giving a toast. And the president of the Suffrage Club, Mrs. C.S. Ferris, she wants what she wants when she wants it. I would have really liked to have been there for that. The 1950s suffragists, they promoted the cause, the automobiles, as I was talking about, speeches, articles, and also promoted suffragette fairs. And here is an announcement or an advertisement for the 1915 fair. And this would have been where the high school is in Potsdam now. That's where the fairgrounds were. Thursday was Automobile in Potsdam Day. And there's a national national suffrage speaker at that fair. And in the contest for the automobile decoration, the Potsdam Club won second place for Miss Liberty. They won something like $12. The WCTU came in third. And so this was really importantly the venue for getting this message of suffrage out. And then here I have a couple of, these are political cartoons that didn't go into the display, but I did want to talk just a little bit about what suffragists were saying. You know, why should you support suffrage for women, to vote for women? And this one was from the Malone, or from a Badger newspaper. And it says that the ballot would benefit, how the ballot would benefit the farmer's wife. She would have a voice in the management of schools. She would have a vote on the construction of county roads, country roads. Her vote would have a direct bearing on securing just legislation for the farmers. And then this other one, same page of the newspaper, the helpless mother, so women could fight against vice. And there were just all kinds of arguments. You know, by 1915, the arguments were less strictly about this is a natural right for women, right of her citizenship, but what that actually meant, right? As a woman, as a citizen, what she would vote for. And something I find really interesting here, that it starts here, she would have a voice in the management of the schools. Well, in New York State, women already did in a lot of places, because they were enfranchised at that school level in 1880. And so it's a bit surprising that that's where it starts here in this newspaper. All right, so mostly again, I focused on the process here. How did we get to 1915? You know, starting with my conversation with Cindy, and then meeting with Brian Cavett, and meeting with the museum, and then really Toki and I getting involved in the research. And it's just seemed like there's just so much on 1915. Right, this is really great what we have here on 1915. And he made up a lot of the decisions on what to include in the display, with the portraits and the timeline and the dress and the programs. But now I'd like to talk a little bit about why this was important, and why this was important when it was a defeat, and it was defeated by a couple 100,000 votes, right? So it wasn't close. And then we see almost the reverse, well, not quite, but we see the major win in 1917. And the importance includes that dedication of suffragists, of CAD, of National American Women Suffrage Association. We are just done losing. We are going to win. Kat launches her winning plan that involved focus on state level and the national amendment to win the 19th Amendment in 1920, but also to win New York State in 1917. Right, so yes, this was a loss, but it was an important step in this victory in New York State, and also on the national level with the 19th Amendment. I have a lot of other questions about why 1915 was important, what the importance of the campaign was at the local level, and interested in learning a lot more about the campaigns in St. Lawrence County. And I'd actually hoped that I would have a little bit more time for that research before this talk. Otherwise, I might have said, oh, well, Carleen, the title's Potsdam. So I might have been a bit misleading there. I would like to know a lot more about the importance of the campaign. Who was involved in the campaign, or like the, you know, was there a certain, were there certain characteristics of women who were suffragists? And Potsdam, it seemed from these leaders that they had been college educated, Potsdam Normal School Crane. In the case of Daisy, was even a faculty there. Married really important people. They were in their mid to late 40s. Probably their children were older, you know, so I'd like to know more about that. If that activity continued after 1915, did these same suffragists continue in 1917? Canton had an organization of women against suffrage. So I discovered that as I was doing this research. So what was going on in Canton with their anti-suffrage association? At the same time, there was this political equality club there. The WCTU in Canton also supported suffrage. I'm curious to know in which ways the St. Lawrence County women participated in the local Granges. Did they vary in their support? Right, so there's a lot more that I would still like to know. And if any of you here or on Zoom have any answers, like more information, I would be happy to hear that here, or if you wanted to reach out an email, or if you have any questions. So I'll stop there. I went a little bit longer than I thought I was going to go, actually. So am I still under the 40 minutes? All right. Okay. All right. So we still have plenty of time for questions.
Oh, yes, like
Okay.
15.
Okay, great. Great.
Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Yes.
So there's an anti-suffrage in Canton. How was it received generally throughout St. Lawrence County or Jefferson County or?
Yeah, so this area was, the counties in this area defeated it. The men voted against it. Only 6 counties though in 1915 actually did vote yes. I think, so I didn't see in Potsdam, and what I found, like any like open hostility other than those who were so upset with what Carrie Chapman Catt said about Potsdam. And in the Potsdam Normal magazine, I didn't see any like really major support, but again, not like really any hostility either. And Potsdam didn't have an anti-club organization. And so that's just, again, what I'd like to know more, like to compare Potsdam and Canton, why was there that opposition there? Why more support in Potsdam?
Right.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So did you only look at the museum of Potsdam, you didn't go like to any of the local museums and see what they
Yeah, so Toki just worked with the Potsdam Museum, and it was in part as his internship and his location on campus that he didn't have the means, the opportunity to go more places. Yes.
Of imagining images of people marching in parades and such. Did you come across any hints of such activities?
Oh, it was more that the cars, right? Like a couple of cars or a parade of cars.
And they might have signs on the cars.
I don't know
Yeah.
because we don't have the or I couldn't find the images. And I had really hoped that there would be something with the 1915 Miss Liberty car, you know, to see what that had looked like. But it does seem like there was though that spectacle, you know, of in the cities there would be the larger demonstrations, but that on a smaller scale in a lot of places around here.
So what would have been the scale of the number of people or cars attending these parades?
That's a good question. And what I found, there wasn't more than a couple, like just right around here. In terms of the meetings, there would be about 100 in attendance. And then the places where there would be more crowds, like the fairs, you know, that there would be a lot more people. And also that those organizations of women opposed to suffrage, like in Canton, they were at the fairs too. They were doing some of the very similar things as the suffragists were doing in their the suffragists were doing in their activism, they were just saying, well, we're doing this to defend the home and women's place in the home. But they were using some of the same tactics, which was very interesting.
We had a question from the chat.
Yeah.
Someone is wondering if Marion Sanger Frank was the sister of Margaret Sanger.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. Margaret, or I'm sorry, Marion Sanger Frank was from New York City, was from a Jewish family. I don't know a lot about her and hope to learn more about her. But I don't think they are.